my dead body will you marry before my own daughters. You will not wear bridal clothes while my daughters remain in this house. I did not raise you for men to look at you first. Your future is mine.
I will block your road with my own body if I must. The words did not fall gently. They struck the compound like stones thrown by an unseen hand. Chickens scattered. A clay pot near the kitchen wall trembled and tipped, spilling water into the dust. Adesela stood frozen, her bare feet planted on the earth that had raised her, her eyes lowered not out of guilt but out of survival. She knew that answering back would only sharpen the knife already pressed against her fate. If you enjoy African folktales, please subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories like this. Opieme's chest rose and fell rapidly as though something wild was trapped inside her. Her wrapper was knotted tight, her arms crossed like barriers, her gaze daring the world to challenge her vow. Neighbors pretended not to hear, yet every ear in the compound leaned toward the sound of hatred spoken aloud. In places like this, words were never just words. They were seeds, and some seeds grew thorns. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Even the wind paused. The mango tree at the center of the compound, older than memory, stood as witness. Beneath it, generations had sworn oaths, settled quarrels, and called ancestors to account. It was not a place where empty promises survived. Adesela swallowed hard. Her throat burned, but no tears fell. She had learned early that tears fed cruelty. Instead, she bowed her head slightly, the way one did before storms, and stepped back. Each step felt like she was walking away from light into a narrowing path whose end she could not see. That night, sleep refused to come. Adesela lay on her mat, staring at the thatched roof, listening to the breathing of the house. Every creak sounded like judgment. Every distant cry felt like a warning. Opieme's words replayed in her mind again and again, heavier each time, until they no longer sounded like a threat, but like a law written into her bones. Long before that evening, before jealousy sharpened its teeth, the compound had known a softer rhythm. Laughter once lived there. Peace once sat on the doorsteps at dusk. But peace is a guest that leaves quietly when bitterness is invited in. Adesela had not always known life under watchful eyes. There was a time when her mother's voice, Yatund, filled the mornings, when warm hands braided her hair, when stories were told by firelight without fear of punishment. Yatund died during the season when the rains overstayed their welcome, leaving behind a child too young to understand that some absences never return. For years after, Adesela and her father, Babatunde, lived alone. Life was hard, but it was honest. They shared food, shared silence, and shared grief. Babatunde worked from sunrise to sunset, and Adesela learned to help where she could. Love, though strained, held them together. Then Babatunde remarried. The new wife, Opieme, arrived with 2 daughters, Mareo and Damilola, and many promises. She spoke sweetly at first, praising Adesela's obedience, calling her daughter in the presence of others. The compound welcomed her, hopeful that balance had returned. But balance is fragile when comparison enters the house. As seasons passed, Adesela grew. Not loudly, not proudly, but naturally, like a plant that did not know how to be anything else. Her beauty was quiet, the kind that rested in the eyes and stayed there. Elders noticed her humility. Women trusted her. Men began to glance twice when she passed. That was when Opieme's eyes began to change. Praise turned into inspection. Kindness turned into control. Adesela's chores doubled, then tripled. She was sent for water when others rested, sent to the farm when others ate. Any mistake, no matter how small, was remembered and repeated. Opieme watched Mareo and Damilola closely, measuring them against Adesela in silence. Though they were loved and cared for, they did not draw attention the same way. Comparison, once planted, whispered constantly in Opieme's ear. When the first suitor passed the compound and asked quietly about Adesela, Opieme laughed him away. She said the girl was too young, too stubborn, too unready. The man left confused but polite. Another came months later. This time, Opieme's smile was thin. She spoke of bad dreams, bad signs, bad blood. Again, the path closed. Adesela did not protest. She did not ask questions. She simply waited, believing patience was a form of protection. But patience can also become a cage. Each refusal tightened something unseen around her future. Opiame began to speak more boldly, no longer hiding her resentment. She reminded Adesela daily of her place, of whose children mattered most, of who must go first and who must wait. And then came the evening under the mango tree, when restraint finally broke. The vow spoken that day did not fade with the sunset. It settled into the walls, into the soil, into Adesela's spirit. From then on, Hope walked carefully around the compound, afraid to be seen. Yet even as the vow echoed, the earth listened. In folktales, the earth always listens. It remembers voices, weighs intentions, and answers in its own time. Adesela did not know this yet. All she knew was that something precious had been challenged, and that her life would never move forward without first passing through fire. And so the story truly began, not with love, but with a promise made in hatred, spoken aloud where destiny could hear. Days followed the vow, each one heavier than the last. Opiame carried herself like a guard at a closed gate, watching Adesela with sharp attention. Every movement was questioned. Every silence was suspected. It was as if the vow had given her new strength, feeding her purpose. She repeated the words in different forms, sometimes softly, sometimes with venom, ensuring Adesela never forgot where the boundary lay. Babatunde noticed the change, but said little. His shoulders were already bent from years of labor and regret. He had lost one wife and feared losing another kind of peace. When he looked at his daughter, guilt flickered in his eyes, but fear quickly smothered it. In many homes, silence is chosen over justice, and that choice leaves scars that never show on the skin. At night, elders spoke in low voices beyond the compound walls. They had heard the vow. Nothing spoken under the mango tree ever truly stayed private. Some shook their heads, warning that blocking another person's destiny invited trouble. Others shrugged, saying family matters were not for outsiders. In the end, the compound returned to its routine, but the air remained restless. Adesela began to dream strange dreams. She saw roads that ended suddenly, doors that closed just as she reached them, and shadows that stepped in front of her whenever light appeared. She woke each morning tired, carrying the weight of battles fought in sleep. Still, she rose, swept the yard, fetched water, and cooked meals with steady hands. Strength, she had learned, did not always roar. Sometimes, she sat alone by the stream at dusk, watching her reflection ripple and break. She wondered what marriage truly meant and why it could inspire such hatred. She wondered how love could be rationed like food in a hungry season. But most of all, she wondered whether words spoken in anger could truly chain a life. The elders taught that vows were living things. Once released, they walked, listened, and waited. If fed with continued bitterness, they grew strong. If starved by repentance, they weakened. Opiame did not starve hers. She fed it daily with resentment, with comparisons, with the quiet satisfaction of control. Yet the earth was patient. It allowed humans to speak, to swear, to boast. It waited for balance. And though no one in the compound could see it, the ground beneath the mango tree held the vow carefully, measuring its weight against the heart that had spoken it. For now, Adesela endured. Her story was still at its beginning. The road ahead was hidden, but the first stone had already been placed, and it would shape every step that followed. Fate does not rush, but it never forgets. What was spoken in anger would demand an answer, whether through sorrow, silence, or change. The compound slept, unaware that a slow turning had begun beneath ordinary days. Adesela folded her mat that night and breathed deeply, unaware that endurance itself was becoming her quiet weapon, and that patience, though painful, was already shaping the key to her freedom. Dawn would come, and with it, consequences no vow could permanently delay. Forever, morning came softly, as though unsure it was welcome. The compound woke under a strange quiet, the kind that followed heavy words spoken too boldly the night before. The mango tree still stood at the center, unmoved, yet the air around it felt altered, as if something invisible had been tied to its roots. What had been spoken there had not slept. It had only waited. Adesela rose before the rooster. She folded her mat carefully, just as she had the night before, her movements calm though her chest felt tight. Endurance had already begun to shape her days. In houses like this, survival was not loud. It was precise. From the inner room came soft laughter. Moreo and Damalola, her step-sisters, emerged together, wrappers tied neatly, hair freshly plaited, skin glowing with the ease of those who were protected. They were no longer girls learning the world. Moreo, already past 20, carried herself with the confidence of a woman who believed the future owed her something. Damalola, a year behind her, had eyes sharper than her smile, the kind that noticed weakness and stored it away. They stopped when they saw Adesela. The laughter faded, replaced by a look that needed no words. "So you're awake already," Moreo said lightly, her tone sweet but her eyes measuring. "You hardly slept. Or did the vow keep you company?" Damalola laughed, adjusting her beads. "People who are patient always sleep well, they say? Or is it people who have nothing to hope for?" Adesela lowered her eyes and passed them, carrying her water pot toward the stream. She had learned that silence unsettled some people more than answers ever could. Behind her, the sisters exchanged glances. Hatred, when shared, grows bolder. Opiami watched from the doorway. She said nothing, but her approval rested quietly in her stillness. Some cruelty does not need instruction. It only needs permission. By midday, the compound had settled into its routine, but the balance had shifted. Tasks that once belonged to many now found their way to Adesela alone. Firewood that could have been shared was suddenly her burden. Water fetched twice became water fetched 4 times. When she moved slowly from fatigue, Moreo shook her head. "Is that how you plan to enter marriage?" she asked loudly, ensuring the words traveled. "Dragging your feet like an old woman?" Damalola added. "Even if anyone wanted you, who would wait for such laziness?" Their words were sharp, deliberate, and repeated often enough to stick. Opiami did not intervene. Instead, she corrected Adesela's smallest mistakes, turning them into lessons spoken loudly enough for her daughters to hear. Each correction felt like another stone added to a wall already rising around the girl's life. By evening, whispers moved through the compound like ants after rain. Neighbors had noticed the tension. Elders had heard fragments. The vow under the mango tree had begun its quiet journey from mouth to mouth. In villages like this, nothing powerful stayed hidden for long. That night, as oil lamps flickered, Moreo sat close to her mother, braiding her hair with practiced hands. "You did well yesterday," she said softly. "Some people need to be reminded where they stand." Damalola nodded. "If she is blocked early, she will stop dreaming." Opiami's lips curved into a thin smile. "Dreams are dangerous things," she replied, "especially when they grow faster than sense." From her corner of the room, Adesela listened without looking up. She focused on the rhythm of sweeping, on the sound of bristles against earth. But inside her, something shifted. Patience was still her shield, but awareness had become her companion. That night, sleep came in pieces. She dreamed of a road narrowing ahead of her, just as it had before, but this time, 2 figures stood beside the path, arms crossed, smiling as they watched her struggle forward. When she woke, her heart raced, and the echo of laughter clung to her ears. By morning, it was clear. Opiami's vow had not only hardened her own heart, it had given her daughters a purpose. And hatred, once it learns to walk, does not walk alone. Market day in Eyelion was not just a gathering, it was a mirror. It was the one day the village truly looked at itself. Every compound sent out its best cloth, its brightest beads, its loudest laughter. What people could not hide in their homes was exposed beneath the open sky. That was why Opiami chose this day carefully. If power was to be displayed, it had to be done where witnesses were many. Before the sun rose fully, she stood at the center of her compound, arms folded, eyes sharp with intention. "Today," she said calmly, "this village will remember whose daughters shine." Moreo and Damalola stood before their mother Opiami, already dressed. Moreo, tall and confident at 23, wore a richly patterned wrapper and coral beads that announced status without words. Damalola, 22 and observant, tied her wrapper neatly, her gaze alert, calculating. They looked like young women prepared to be admired, not questioned. Adesela, on the other hand, had been awake since before dawn. She fetched water twice before the cocks crowed, swept the compound until dust coated her ankles, and ground pepper until her palms burned. When she asked quietly if she might change her blouse before the market, Opiami looked at her as though she had spoken nonsense. "Change into what?" Opiami asked. "Is this market yours?" Moreo laughed softly. Damalola turned away, already satisfied. And so Adesela went to the market as she was, dust-marked, tired, plain. The market square burst into life as drums spoke to the earth. Traders called out prices. Children ran between legs. Elders sat beneath a wide umbrella near the Irako tree, observing everything and nothing at once. Opiami guided her daughters deliberately to the front, close to the drummers, close to the elders, close to visiting traders from neighboring villages. Wherever eyes naturally drifted, Moreo and Damalola were placed there. Adesela was kept moving. Carry this basket. Go and collect change. Stand there, not here. Each command was loud enough to be heard. At one point, as Adesela bent to arrange dried peppers, Moreo called out brightly, "Ah, Adesela, careful. You will scatter everything. People will think clumsiness runs in your blood." Laughter rippled through nearby traders. Damalola added smoothly, "Some people think silence makes them mysterious. It only makes them invisible." The words landed hard. Adesela's hands trembled for a moment, but she steadied them. She finished arranging the peppers slowly, deliberately, as though the task itself mattered more than the insults thrown at her. Something about that unsettled the onlookers. An elderly woman selling smoked fish frowned. "This girl," she murmured, "she does not carry herself like someone defeated." As the sun climbed higher, the humiliation grew bolder. Moreo instructed Adesela to kneel publicly while greeting elders, even when it was unnecessary. Damalola accidentally spilled palm oil near her feet, then scolded her loudly for being careless. Each time, Adesela endured. She did not beg. She did not cry. She did not defend herself. And slowly, attention shifted, not toward the cruelty, but toward the endurance. A young man passing by paused longer than expected. A trader whispered to his companion. An elder leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing in thought. Then the sign appeared. A small tortoise emerged from the edge of the market square, its shell dusty, its movements slow and deliberate. Children noticed first, pointing and laughing, but the elders stiffened. In Ilion, the tortoise was not just an animal. It was a messenger of patience, of wisdom, of destiny that moved slowly but arrived fully. The tortoise crossed directly in front of Adesela and stopped. It did not hurry. It did not retreat. It remained there, unmoving, as if claiming space. An elder cleared his throat softly. Another elder shifted uncomfortably. "This is strange," one murmured. "Very strange." Adesela froze, unsure whether to move. Her heart beat hard in her chest. The market noise dimmed, replaced by a low hush. After a moment that felt longer than it was, the tortoise continued on its path and disappeared beneath a trader's table. Noise returned, but something had changed. Whispers moved faster now. "Did you see that? Tortoises do not stop without reason. She is marked." Moreo noticed the looks. Damalola noticed the silence. Opiami noticed everything. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers curled into her wrapper. She laughed loudly, forcing sound back into the square. "Superstition," she said. "Some of you see meaning where there is none." But the elders did not laugh. As the market wound down, conversations followed Adesela instead of her tormentors. Women spoke in half-sentences. Men asked questions they did not finish. "She carries grace," one said. "She carries patience," another replied. "And patience," an elder concluded quietly, "is not empty." On the walk home, Moreo and Damalola said nothing. Their earlier confidence had dulled, replaced by irritation that refused to settle. Behind them, Opiami walked stiffly. That night, she did not eat. She sat alone in her room, listening to the distant sounds of the village settling into sleep. The vow she had spoken beneath the mango tree returned to her mind, not as power, but as warning. For the first time, she wondered if she had spoken too loudly. For the first time, she sensed that destiny had lifted its head and was looking back at her. And in folktales, when destiny begins to look back, it is already moving. Cruelty, when it feels threatened, does not retreat. It sharpens itself. After the market day, Moreo and Damalola no longer bothered to hide their resentment. Whatever restraint they once carried fell away like old cloth. The whispers they had spread quietly before were now spoken boldly, with confidence sharpened by fear. They watched Adesela differently now, not as someone beneath them, but as something dangerous, something rising. Moreo was the first to act. One morning, she waited until Opiami was within earshot, then cried out suddenly. "My beads," she shouted. "They are gone." The compound froze. Damalola joined immediately. Those coral beads Mother brought from Oyo? They were here last night. Opieme's eyes snapped toward Adesela. Where were you last night? She demanded. Adesela lifted her head slowly. I was here, she said. I slept where I always sleep. Moreo scoffed. Of course you did. Thieves always sleep well. Before Adesela could respond, Opieme ordered her mat pulled apart, her small belongings scattered in the dirt. The beads were not found, but that did not matter. The accusation had already taken root. You will repay what you steal, Opieme said coldly. And until you do, you will work twice as hard. The beads were later found in Moreo's room. No apology followed. From that day, accusations became routine. When food went missing, Adesela was blamed. When palm wine soured, her name was spoken. When a goat escaped its rope, Damalola pointed directly at her. Each lie stacked upon the last, until truth itself grew tired of defending her. Opieme escalated the punishment carefully, disguising cruelty as discipline. She sent Adesela to the far stream at night, when shadows thickened and the path narrowed. She ordered her to collect firewood from land elders warned against, places where snakes nested and spirits were said to linger. Fear will teach you humility, Opieme said. Once, she sent Adesela to deliver a message to a compound known for hostility, knowing well the insults that would follow. Adesela returned hours later, eyes red, wrapper torn, but silent. Moreo and Damalola watched her return with satisfaction. She always survives, Damalola muttered. Yes, Moreo replied. But she is breaking. They were wrong. Adesela was not breaking. She was thinning. Like metal beaten repeatedly, she was being reshaped by force. At night, she lay awake, her body aching, her spirit stretched thin. The dreams returned stronger now. Yutun no longer stood at a distance. She sat beside Adesela in the dream, humming softly, her hands glowing faintly. When Adesela woke, her pain eased briefly, as though unseen hands had touched her wounds. But daylight brought no mercy. One afternoon, Moreo deliberately spilled a pot of soup meant for visitors. She screamed loudly, clutching her head. Oh, my soup! Mother, look what Adesela has done. Damalola reinforced the lie instantly. She was angry. I saw it in her eyes. Opieme did not ask questions. She dragged Adesela into the open compound and ordered her to kneel under the sun. You will stay there, she said, until humility enters your bones. Hours passed. The sun burned. Dust clung to sweat. Neighbors watched from behind doors, some shaking their heads, others afraid to intervene. Adesela knelt. She did not beg. She did not curse. She focused on breathing. Inside her chest, something steady pulsed, quiet, enduring, alive. When evening came, thunder rolled in the distance without rain. A strange wind passed through the compound, lifting dust in slow spirals. An elder passing by paused. This weather, he muttered, is not ordinary. That night, Moreo and Damalola slept uneasily. They dreamed of being chased by shadows they could not outrun. Damalola woke gasping, her heart racing. Moreo sat upright, sweating. Neither spoke of it. The next morning, Opieme's cruelty reached deeper. She ordered Adesela to enter the old forest at dawn to retrieve herbs from a place few dared visit. If you return empty-handed, she warned, do not return at all. Adesela walked into the forest alone. The air grew heavy. Sounds dimmed. Birds fell silent. At the deepest point, she felt it, the presence she had known only in dreams. The leaves rustled though no wind blew. The river nearby glowed faintly, its surface unnaturally still. Adesela knelt, trembling. A warmth wrapped around her. When she returned home, herbs in hand, lightning split the sky again, still without rain. Opieme watched from the doorway, unease creeping into her eyes. That night, a powerful sign appeared. The mango tree shook violently, though the air was calm. Its leaves fell in a sudden rush, covering the ground beneath it like a warning. Elders gathered the next morning. Something had awakened, and it was no longer watching quietly. The day the prince arrived in Ilion did not announce itself with drums. There was no trumpet, no procession, no warning carried by wind or gossip. He came the way destiny often does, quietly, unexpectedly, stepping into ordinary life as though he had always been meant to pass through. He arrived with hunters. Their clothes were dusted from travel, their voices low, their movements disciplined. They stopped near the river on the outskirts of the village, where paths crossed and strangers were noticed. Word spread slowly at first. A visitor, a wealthy one, a prince, they say. Opiami heard last. By then, the prince had already seen Adesela. It happened by chance, or so it seemed. Adesela had been sent to the river again, this time to wash heavy pots no one else wanted to carry. The sun was high, the water cold against her hands. She worked quietly, focused, unaware of eyes watching from the shade of tall trees. The prince noticed her not because she tried to be seen, but because she did not. While others laughed loudly nearby, she worked in silence. When her pot slipped and water splashed her wrapper, she did not curse or complain. She adjusted it calmly and continued. When an old woman struggled to lift her basin, Adesela stepped forward without hesitation and helped. The prince watched. He asked one of the hunters, "Who is that woman?" The hunter followed his gaze. "That one. She lives in Opiami's compound." "Is she married?" the prince asked. The hunter shook his head slowly. "No, my lord." Something settled in the prince's chest. Later that evening, as Adesela walked home, she felt the familiar sensation of being observed. She did not turn immediately. She had learned that attention could be dangerous. But when she did, her eyes met his. He did not stare rudely. He inclined his head respectfully. "Good evening," he said simply. Adesela greeted him properly, lowering herself slightly, her voice calm. They exchanged only a few words. Nothing bold, nothing promising. But when she walked away, the prince remained where he was, watching her disappear down the path. Opiami sensed the shift before she understood it. That night, she noticed the way Moreo paced restlessly, the way Damilola's questions came too fast. "Mother," Moreo said, "who is that man near the river?" Opiami's heart tightened. "Why?" He asked about Adesela. Damilola said quietly. The room went still. Opiami felt heat rush to her head. The vow beneath the mango tree roared back to life, louder, angrier. "No," she whispered. "Not this." Panic did not suit Opiami. Control did. And when control threatened to slip, she reached for darker things. That night, she wrapped herself in black cloth and left the compound quietly. Moreo and Damilola watched her go, unease flickering across their faces. She went to the shrine. The place was old, hidden where roots broke through stone. The air smelled of earth and decay. The priest did not ask questions. He only listened. "I want her blocked," Opiami said. "Her road, her destiny, everything." The priest warned her. "Some paths are guarded." Opiami did not listen. She paid. She knelt. She spoke names that tasted bitter in her mouth. She renewed her vow, this time feeding it with offerings meant to bind, not just threaten. Unseen forces stirred. That same night, Adesela dreamed again. But this time, the dream was not gentle. The river rose violently. The sky darkened. Yetund, her late mother, stood before her, no longer silent. Her face was firm, her eyes blazing. "They are pushing too far," Yetund said. "Stand firm." When Adesela woke, her body trembled, not with fear, but with awareness. The spiritual battle had begun. By morning, strange things happened. A calabash shattered without being touched. A hen laid an egg stained dark. The mango tree creaked, its branches groaning as though under weight no one could see. The prince fell ill briefly, then recovered suddenly. Opiami, however, did not recover. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. At first, she hid it. Then she could not. She began to see shadows moving where no one stood. She heard whispers calling her name at night. Her appetite vanished. Sleep fled. Moreo and Damilola grew afraid. "Mother," Damilola whispered one night. "What did you do?" Opiami did not answer. The prince returned to the river the next day. He spoke to elders. He asked about Adesela openly now. Some hesitated. Others exchanged knowing looks. "She has endured much," one elder said carefully. The prince nodded. "I see that." When Opiami heard this, something inside her snapped. She rose suddenly, dizzy, and took a step, then collapsed. Her body shook violently. Her mouth opened, but the sounds that came out were not words anyone recognized. The unseen world had responded, and it was not finished. Opiami's sickness did not behave like ordinary illness. It did not come with fever alone, nor did it respond to herbs or prayers offered halfway. It came in waves, sometimes silent, sometimes violent, leaving her body trembling and her eyes hollow. At night, she screamed names no one taught her mouth to remember. By day she sat rigid, staring at corners where nothing stood, arguing with shadows only she could see. The village took notice. Illness that refused healing was never ignored in Ilion. Elders whispered among themselves. Women shook their heads. Men avoided Opiome's compound, not out of cruelty, but caution. When sickness carried guilt, it could spread like smoke. Moreo and Damalola, her adult daughters, were the first to feel shame. They stopped leaving the compound together. Their bright wrappers remained folded. When people greeted them, responses came late, uncertain. Whispers followed them like flies. That is Opiome's house. Yes, the one with the girl. The one with the vow. The prince remained. He did not press. He did not boast. He waited, watching carefully as destiny unfolded without his interference. When he spoke to elders, he spoke with respect. When he greeted Adesela, he did so openly now, without secrecy. Adesela herself moved as though carrying both weight and protection. Though Opiome's cruelty had stopped, not from repentance but weakness, the marks remained. Yet something about her presence had changed. She no longer moved as someone bracing for blows. She moved as someone being watched over. At night, Yatund appeared no longer in fragments. She came whole. In Adesela's dreams, her mother stood tall, luminous, no longer bound by silence. She touched Adesela's shoulder gently. "The time has come," Yatund said. "Truth must walk in daylight." The following morning, Opiome collapsed again, this time in public. It happened near the market square. She had insisted on stepping out, claiming strength she did not possess. Halfway across the open space, her legs gave way. She screamed, not in pain, but terror. "They are here," she cried. "They will not leave me." People gathered. Elders exchanged looks that needed no words. "The square," one said quietly. "Bring her to the square." By afternoon, Ilion stood gathered beneath the open sky. The mango tree watched, as it always had. Opiome was brought forward, supported on both sides. Her body shook violently, her eyes wild. Moreo and Damalola stood behind her, faces pale, stripped of pride. The eldest man in the village stepped forward. "Opiome," he said calmly, "what troubles you?" Opiome laughed suddenly, a sharp, broken sound. "You ask as if you do not know," she said. "You all know." The crowd stilled. "I spoke words," she continued, voice cracking. "I spoke them where the earth could hear. I vowed. I blocked. I cursed." Gasps rippled outward. The elder raised a hand. "Speak clearly." Opiome's shoulders sagged. Something heavy lifted from her chest, replaced by fear raw and exposed. "I vowed that Adesela would not marry before my daughters," she said. "I swore it under the mango tree. I fed the vow with cruelty. I sent her into danger. I lied. I consulted darkness." Moreo covered her mouth. Damalola stared at the ground. The crowd murmured, some in anger, others in sorrow. And when destiny came, Opiome sobbed. "I fought it. I went to the shrine. I tried to block what was protected." Thunder rolled in the distance. The elder nodded slowly. "And now?" Opiome collapsed forward, weeping. "Now I cannot escape. Her mother stands before me every night. She does not shout. She only looks. And I am breaking." Silence fell heavy. Then the elder spoke words that had waited long to be spoken. "Jealousy challenged destiny," he said. And destiny answered. Judgment followed tradition. Opiome was banished. Not beaten. Not cursed. Banished. Sent away from the land that had heard her vow and rejected it. She was given time to leave before sunset. Moreo and Damalola were not banished, but their punishment was quieter and deeper. Their names lost shine. Their pride collapsed. Suitors turned away. Shame followed them like a second skin. As Opiome was led away, she turned once toward Adesela. "I did not know," she whispered. "I did not know she was protected." Adesela said nothing. Some apologies arrived too late to be answered. That evening, as the sun lowered itself gently, the prince stood before the elders. "I did not come seeking trouble," he said. "I came seeking truth. I have found it." The elders nodded. The marriage was agreed, not in haste, not in secrecy, but openly, with balance restored. That night, Adesela dreamed one final dream. Yatund stood by the river, peaceful now. The water flowed gently. Birds sang. "My work is done," Yatund said. Live. When Adesela woke, her heart felt light for the first time in years. The wedding took place under clear skies. The mango tree stood nearby, its leaves still. Drums spoke joy instead of warning. The village gathered not out of curiosity, but relief. Balance had returned, and the elders spoke the moral aloud, as folktales demand. Jealousy may shout, but destiny walks quietly. Vows spoken and hatred return with interest, and patience, though wounded, always arrives whole. So the story ended, not with noise, but with truth standing firmly where cruelty once ruled. And Eilion remembered,